You're listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. Today is November 22nd, 2023, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I am joined today, as always, by my co-host, Jason Lucas. Jason, how are you doing this fine Wednesday?
Spencer, hello. I'm doing very well. It's officially Season 3 season. You know, we got Vault rewards and we're doing the whole thing now. We're getting into the rotation. It is Wednesday. It is Thanksgiving Eve, which in the U.S. is traditionally a very big party night. And it's no exception on here. I'll be taking my party into Keystone Dungeons and raids this evening. So looking forward to the holiday weekend. I mean, hey, Thanksgiving weekend is also always synonymous with WoW because that's when it came out originally in 2004. So I'm really enjoying the current content now that we're really digging into it and seeing what it consists of. And I've played a lot more than I had been before my whirlwind month of travel and vacations and stuff. It's just finding excuses to play and finding stuff to do and feeling rewarded for it. I think that's a big part of it in terms of the solo play. Like, obviously raid spins back up, dungeons spin back up. Everybody wants to go get new stuff, achieve new things, whatever. That's kind of a given, but also just like really enjoying the stuff that Dragonflight has to offer, digging into all kinds of stuff as part of that whole process, and just, feeling motivated to spend more time in the game, I guess, is where I sort of find myself after the last week or so.
Yeah, I would say that the game right now is certainly capturing a lot of people's attention who might have drifted off for a bit, including myself. I've been playing a lot more World of Warcraft this past week. I've also been doing the thing where I park my alts at the question person inside Caverns of Time and get the experience every single day. It's like every 3 questions is a level, so it's like every 3 days you just get free levels, which is very good. Nice.
I haven't been doing that. Not that I forgot, but it wasn't on my radar. But that's pretty good, man. That's a nice yield for doing basically nothing. Yep.
Yeah, you log in, and as long as you have a little bit of WoW knowledge, you're pretty much good to go, which is nice. So that's been a really great thing. The whole Caverns of Time. I want to highlight top of the show, since we are still in the middle of the anniversary event. The Caverns of Time thing is hyper nostalgia. Everything there is nostalgia. All the characters there, the quests that are there, the tasks you can do, and probably my favorite thing that I took advantage of this year is the Caverns of Time has this like cinematic area where basically there's a troll that's like hanging out next to a whole bunch of crystals, and each crystal is a different version of World of Warcraft over the years. And if you interact with those crystals, there's a list, depending on which ones you're interacting with, of both in-game and actual cinematics for those expansions. And man, oh man, if you want to get some tearjerkers going, you really can pretty easily with those. I mean, obviously there's the OG. I watched the OG WoW one, and then I watched the Legion opening one, and then I watched the BFA opening one, and it was like, oh my god, I'm wiping tears off my face. Like, it's like they're so pretty and beautiful, and the nostalgia and the like throwback and the characters and the epic moments. It's really neat to be able to go through that. Today I watched the I Am My Scars one, the Rejecting of the Gift.
From 7.2, right? Like when you're on Argus, yeah.
So that's
a great one.
There's a lot of great ones, and it's just neat to sort of every now and then, like I'm answering questions on characters, so it's like, I'll walk over to one of the crystals and check it out and click on one of the cinematics and watch it and be like, oh, I really, really dug that era of World of Warcraft, or I really enjoyed the cinematic, or, you watch Saurfang's Fall, or you watch, like, there's so many really great moments that they've highlighted over the years that, take advantage of those crystals, man. They're pretty cool to click on and interact with, so wanted to highlight
sort of those. Like the in-game version of BlizzCon.
I think that's part of it.
It's sort of like a big like in-game celebration of the game itself, which is that's kind of how they built it up over the years. It's cool.
Yeah, so I definitely have enjoyed the anniversary. I mean, obviously the 19% increased reputation and experience gain has been absolutely phenomenal as well, playing with the new faction. So there's a lot of logging in, doing your sort of weekly stuff that you want to do, getting as much reputation as you can out of that, getting the rewards you can out of that. It seems like everything weekly is a 441 or above reward, which is nice because it's helping everyone sort of get up to that eye level pretty quickly. 441 is what drops out of LFR, so it counts as one of those weekly tasks. If you're trying to level up, gear up your character, you can certainly do it that way. So that's a good thing to keep in mind as well. So, nah, man, what have you gotten up to this past week in WoW?
Well, quite a bit. I mean, mostly, almost exclusively playing the main. I haven't really done too much stuff with Alta. Did a little bit with like taking the monk out to Emerald Dream, but I'm mostly just focused on the main, doing the warrior stuff. First week of raid was great. I mean, we spoke, I think, after 2 nights, and then we still had a third night. So we ended up finishing up first week 9 of 9 normal and 3 of 9 heroic, which is great for our team. I do think, I mean, this raid is very approachable. It's definitely tuned favorably to players so far, especially like the normal raid is much less complex than, I mean, when you think about where we were in BFA or Shadowlands, what some of those fights look like, and end bosses and everything, Amir Drasil is not that. And I think it's even more approachable than Abyss was, which I was shocked by how good that raid felt to get into and to learn. So I'm really happy about that. Like, when it comes to especially doing like the lower difficulties, I don't really want to be brick walling or running into weird problems with bosses. I will say that Heroic Volcaros was fun because the Tank Buster hits shockingly hard, like the first time you step in there on Heroic, and tanks almost never get hit hard anymore. Like, there's certain things that hit hard sometimes, or there's mechanics that if you handle them wrong, it's a wipe because people got slashed with it or whatever because you didn't position right. But rarely is there a Tank Buster where it's like, how do I live through this? And so right. Volcaros was, that was a bit tricky. I mean, my co-tank is a little under-geared coming into the season. He's not a super, like, key pusher or whatever, so he wasn't coming in at basically, like, 450 and, just going straight into it. And I don't think I have made a shield for him recently, so, stuff like that adds up quick when it comes to big physical hits, is getting more block rating on your shield and everything. And meanwhile, the whole time Volcaros does his regular melee attack, he stacks this debuff on the tank, so you want to line up the taunt swap so that you're taunting Cataclysm Jaws when you have no stacks of the debuff. That gets a little bit tricky because DBM kind of just screams at both tanks when Cataclysm Jaws is going out, so we agreed to just shut off that warning in DBM and just communicate with each other about when we were taunting, which made a big difference and also helped us line up, cooldowns and whatever around the big hits. But I got to go back to what was the patchwork fight, the Hydra boss in Old Deer. That's the last time I think I got hit that hard on a lower difficulty, the Unstable Amalgam or whatever it was called.
I just remembered that it could walk. It had like a strut to staying alive or whatever it was. It just literally walked along. It was perfect. It
was the silliest looking giant 3-headed monster we've ever fought in this game. But that thing wrecked tanks pretty hard, and Volcaros is kind of on that level. I was stunned. But we got it down. It felt great to get 3 heroic bosses down the first week. And then last night we went back in and cleared out normal in 2 hours flat. So that was good. Just felt pretty efficient. Like, we're going to do normal for a little bit to dish out set tokens and stuff and just get everybody sort of used to how the fights look and as we work our way through. But I don't really want to spend more than one night on it at this point. And then once we have the skip unlocked, who knows? We might just go straight to Farak and sort of do that and call it good, because we didn't have great luck with tokens on the reclear. We only got a few of them, but I think Farak is guaranteed to drop an Omni token per 10 players, and I'm rolling with 30 right now, so getting 3 Omni tokens for that much work seems like maybe the play. But yeah, overall, really enjoying Amir Drasil so far. It is that tricky part of, from like a raid leader perspective, there's a lot of expectations and everybody wants something different, and I can't accommodate everybody. I can't bring more than 30 players into the raid, stuff like that. So just some logistical challenges around that, but the content itself I think is fantastic. As far as Keystones go, I did manage to accomplish my goal of doing each dungeon in the pool at least once on Fortified Week.
Very nice.
So I finished the week at 1200 rating, give or take. I think I had like a +5 thrown at the tide, so like it counted, but it barely did anything. This week is our first look at Tyrannical, obviously, this season, and so that's a learning experience because we really didn't know what the bosses did last week, right? Like, it's just a whole different thing until you see that kind of Tyrannical ramp up. But I did a bunch of keys last night and got up over 1500, so I got Conqueror done so far, and you get the of the Dreaming title for that, or something like that. A very Ysera kind of title, so that's cool.
Yeah.
So far, I mean, I feel like the dungeon pool feels mostly pretty good. There's obviously some parts that are spiky and difficult, but it is Keystone Dungeons, and there are parts of it that are going to be hard and supposed to be, but feels nice to move into a new dungeon pool and just not be doing the same old dungeons, the same old routes, the same bosses over and over again. It's really the big advantage of the rotating pool. So that's been fun, and just, I have some new people that I'm doing Keystones with that I haven't played with before, and I'm grabbing some old friends who we've been doing Keystones with for a while, and some people who are sort of in between. So that's fun too. Kind of that set group that I had for many patches in a row has pretty much all been scattered at this point, unfortunately. Okay. But obviously we have a pretty strong core group of players, and we've picked up some really cool people from the Death Jesters and Zeros to Heroes community. So, the biggest thing is just healers. That's what we were always short on, and I have a few healers in my orbit these days, which is awesome.
Good.
So, get a tank and a healer, and it's pretty easy to find 3 DPS for kind of whatever you want to do, right? It tends
to be. And the DPS tend to vary a lot since there's a pretty good variety of them. I've been healing keys this week. I should probably hop in with keys with you at some point. I did some 13s and some 10s and some, that kind of stuff to sort of dip my toe into things. So I certainly have been experiencing some of the new, I guess, the new dungeon pool, and feeling some of the hotfixes that just came in last night, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the show. So I'll hold off on talking too much about M+, just because I have opinions about things, and I want them to feel relevant right at the time and tie things together. We do have a
lot of Mythic Plus stuff to talk about in terms of changes this week. So yeah, I mean,
that's what I want to do.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, I guess I'll mention one more thing. While I was doing my outdoor stuff, I threw this out as a tweet. I also threw this up in the Discord. I don't know how many people got one of these, but I finished my Super Bloom. I got my like bag reward you get at the end of the Super Bloom. I also at the same time turned in for a bag reward for planting the 5 seeds. And out of one of those 2 bags, I got a bag that was called the Overflowing Sack of Coins, which gave me like 16,000 gold. And I was like, okay, that's a reward. If that's a weekly reward thing, that sounds great. Let's just keep that thing coming. Wherever that came from.
I did not roll one of those so far, but that sounds lovely. That's cool. Like I feel like that kind of stuff has been missing from outdoor rewards. Like just even the opportunity to make some real gold like that is cool.
It was genuinely surprising, which is the best part about it, right? Getting something in the game where you're like, wait, did I just read that right? Like I screenshotted it. I was like, did I just read this right? Like, is that almost 16,000 gold? What is this?
Is my screen blurry? Is there like an extra zero?
I thought there was an extra digit. I was like, 1,500 gold. Whatever. You're like, wait, no. There's 3 digits after that 15. What's going on here?
Now I could be upset about never getting one every time I do that weekly and don't get it. Now I can be mad. So that's perfect. Even better. But no, I think the outdoor stuff is really cool, and I've been doing a lot of it. I got up to Dream Warden's 18, so I got my augment rune, which was pricey, and that's why I need those gold bags. Right.
It's cool 100K this time around, isn't it?
It's 100K, yeah.
It's way up from the 40K it used to be.
Yeah, and I think even in what was it?
I think it was 80 in Shadowlands.
It was expensive, but it's more expensive than the Shadowlands one. Yeah. But whatever. I mean, it's 87 main stat, which is not like make or break when you're just dinking around in normal and heroic raid, but it's a cool thing to have. And also, man, there's a lot of really accessible rewards inside of Dream Warden's Renown. Like,
right.
I unlocked, I think I was like 15 to start reset week, and then I got all buffed up, and I did all the weekly stuff, and I did all the world quests and everything.
Yep.
I did some story questing that I had just not done yet, like some of the little epilogue stories and stuff. And I got all the way up to 18 by the time I was done my lap. And then I had held on to my seed blooms from the weekly thing to plant the seeds for the first 3 weeks, because I knew there was mounts, and the mounts were the thing I wanted to collect. And so then I hit all those rep thresholds, and then in one day I just got 5 new mounts for like a handful of resources and the weekly currency, and that felt really cool. Like, it was nice to just collect all that stuff and see it all go. Like, all the stuff on the Dream Warden's vendor is just resources. It's not collect these drops off of these things or go to the auction house and buy them or whatever. And you know, a lot of the 10.0 stuff was like that. From the renown rewards were not as simple as just rep up and then spend resources. So I'm glad that this one's like that, because it's fun to collect, and I've gotten a ton of cosmetics out of the system already, and thanks to the rep bonuses, like, I'm almost done with renown. I didn't do your alt first, get the 10, get the bonus. Like, I don't want to spend that much time. I'm gonna play it. I missed 1 week of raiding without the augment rune. Like, it's fine. The other stuff will be there very soon, but I think the way it's structured is nice. It feels really good, because when you unlock something, you can actually just have it. You can just go get it from the vendor, assuming you have, you know, some resources on your character.
Yeah, I've definitely enjoyed the renown system for Dream Wardens, and being able to go to the vendor and be like, oh, I just bought 441 gloves, or I just bought a helm, or I just bought certainly things that you could use on your character when you're first starting out. And at first I was kind of like, oh, I wonder if the rewards from the weekly task should be lower item level than LFR. But then you sort of had that realization, like, but LFR is kind of a weekly reward thing too. It's all kind of the same pool, so I think all of them being a 441 makes sense. And I like seeing so many players being able to just get to that relevant item level fairly quickly by doing dream surges and doing stuff with the Dream Wardens and doing the time rift stuff and doing the, like, all these things just feed you gear that can get you to 441 pretty quickly. And I think that's a really neat choice that Blizzard made for this patch to allow players, because I will definitely say, as someone who wasn't doing a lot of Mythic Plus and wasn't raiding up to this point, it was way more difficult to feel relevant item level wise than it is now, which I really like. And I know that in like a month and a half, when everyone's kind of up in that 477 kind of range item level wise, 441 will feel very low. But it's neat that if you came back at the start of this patch, you are essentially catching up with everyone else pretty quickly. And it's not in a way that's not rewarding players who put the time in before we actually sort of got into 10.2. Those players simply hopped into higher level Mythic Plus, and so they started getting the 470 stuff, and they hopped into raids and cleared the raids and got more rewards out of that. And it's just returning players can kind of get to that solid footing a lot easier, which I like. So I think this anniversary event overlapping with 10.2 coming off of BlizzCon has been like a really positive experience for a lot of people around the game. And obviously we're coming up on, Season of Discovery kicking off soon. There's a lot of people still playing classics, so World of Warcraft is in a really good place. So I'm just glad to see that.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback off that for a second, because the cool thing about what you're saying is, like, it presents you with two options. Either the weekly stuff and the outdoor stuff supplements, your LFR and everything like that, and it just gives you extra guaranteed slots, because in LFR you're at the mercy of drops and then winning rolls and whatever. And yes, it unlocks vault slots too, but it's all very random. So it's an opportunity to either supplement that for players who that's like kind of their end goal, or also to just short circuit it if you're a player that is not looking to do LFR, and either like outdoor is kind of where you stop, or you're trying to get into higher rating. Plus, because of the way the gear upgrade system works this season, it stretches way farther out, right? You can get a couple extra tiers or an extra tier here and there, which brings you, that much closer or beyond the baseline of the next track up.
Yeah.
So that kind of helps you have extra investment in that gear if that's sort of where you end up, and you can get a bit more power out of the process, or it helps you it's like an on-ramp, to the gear that you want to get to a bit faster if your goal is beyond LFR and outdoor content. So, I think those are good choices. I think that That is, I've talked to a bunch of people who've been out for a while or have switched characters, and they're very pleasantly surprised at how fast they were able to kind of round out and sort of get caught back up.
Yeah.
And also using the tricks like getting the 450s from the weekly events and turning into season 2 piece just to fill in gaps to get ready to start gearing up again.
Right. Okay, folks, let's hop into what's going on this week in World of Warcraft. All right, this week in World of Warcraft is the Arena Skirmish bonus event, meaning the Sign of the Skirmisher buff is up, increasing honor gains from arena skirmishes by 50%. The quest is still out there as well to win 10 of these, which will reward conquest and actually a big whack load of honor, 2,000 honor. As well, you want to be sure you're, of course, grabbing your Aid in the Accord. We'd recommend people choose Super Bloom, the choice of Super Bloom, when you're offered a choice between two different options, because you're going to want to do your Super Bloom every week for the next, foreseeable. So unless there's a point that we sort of hit down the line where it's like, you know what, you got a really easy choice to do that's going to take you 3 minutes to knock out, you might as well be choosing Super Bloom just because you're going to be doing it anyways for the next chunk of time. So just factor that in. The PvP quests for the week are Random Battlegrounds and Solo Shuffle, meaning that you can pick up these quests and get bonus rewards from doing those activities. The PvP Brawl is Gravity Lapse, which is Eye of the Storm, where every 1 minute the gravity turns off and everyone floats around and sort of creates different paths for you to get from one point to another. There's ways to knock people back, or just be sure that whenever gravity's turning back on, you're not floating over nothing and falling to your death. So just keep that in mind with the Gravity Lapse. This is like the first brawl, one of the very first brawls we ever saw Blizzard do. So I do think it could get a little bit of a tweak to sort of make it a little bit more interesting, but I'm glad to see it when it comes around. It's not the worst one out there, so good to see. All right. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, they should just make this Gravity Lap. This is like Gravity Lap should just be Eye of the Storm, and then
I agree.
Just make a new brawl.
Yep.
We're getting a new battleground in War Within.
Yes, we are.
Maybe we can make a new brawl around that, and then I don't know. Gravity Lapse is fine. I don't know. It's not an attraction where it's like, oh, I got to make sure I do some of that this week. Like,
yeah,
not for me. I mean, I don't do very much PvP anyway, but sometimes I'll, whatever, if it's Cooking Impossible or something that's a little more out of the ordinary, then maybe it gets a look, but Gravity Lapse is probably not getting a look from me.
Yeah. Oristor the Hibernator, the new world boss, the big rune bear in the Emerald Dream, is the boss that's going to be dropping your 441 loot for the week. The plate, chest, and waist, male head and waist, leather hands and feet, cloth legs and feet, and haste verse neck. I actually happened to get the leather hands this week off of knocking him down, nice. Which felt nice. So got myself some gloves, although I replaced them very quickly because I got gloves out of Mythic Plus. So that was nice. But it was cool to see loot drop because it didn't drop last week for me. So at least I got stuff this week, which was very nice. So I was happy to see that. You can still knock out the Zakeli Elders for some 415s. And of course, Strunron, This Guy's Misery is up for that 395 loot. But I would say you're probably only killing Strunron this week to get yourself that Dream Dust to make your dream stuff go faster if you're still trying to gear up a character and get rewards from that, or just get transmog. Strunron's a great way to sort of get a hefty chunk of that. Mythic Plus affixes for the week are Tyrannical, Entangling, and Bursting. And the pool for Season 3 that we're dealing with right now is a Taldazar, Blackrock Hold, Darkheart Thicket, both Dawn of the Infinites, so Wing 1 and 2, Everbloom, Throne of the Tides, and Waycrest Manor. So we're dealing with bosses that deal increased damage and have increased health. And while in combat, Entangling Vines periodically appear and snare players. And when slain, non-boss enemies explode, causing all players to suffer damage over time for over 4 seconds. And this effect stacks. So this week is probably one of our better Tyrannical weeks you're going to see. Entangling can be a bit of a pain, but it's almost like a non-affix. I find as a druid, I could just shapeshift and move faster, but I don't even need to. Often I can just walk and strafe and be out of the entangling well within time to actually get to clear. I think there's only been one time I was doing a Taldazar as being chased by the big dino first boss, and you get entangling, and you're like, okay, I could see this being a problem for someone who was not already moving quickly to get away from the boss. But it's not a major issue. I think overall for a Tyrannical week, this is a good overall affix combo that we're seeing from players. Bursting just means that you got to be careful when you're doing trash, that you're not blowing up all the swords and then just, nuking yourself and your entire squad when you're doing it. But most teams tend to be pretty good at seeing it go to 2 to 3 stacks and then letting it sort of wear off entirely and not refreshing it at 1 second left. I've only had that happen once or twice. I imagine Waycrest with bursting will be a little bit of a rough one as well. There are some larger pulls in there and some more dangerous pulls in there AoE-wise. Everbloom could also see some of the same things. So just be aware and pay attention to it. Throne of the Tides is pretty good. It seems like a lot of the little packs aren't too bad for bursting. I will say those goblin packs are super nasty with bursting. So just keep that in mind because everyone likes AoEing them down really quickly inside Throne of the Tides. But when it comes to overall for this week, I think it's a decent Tyrannical week for folks to sort of get in there and see things.
Yeah, I agree. It's not the worst combo we could possibly have. Yes, entangling does happen during bosses, but like you said, the counterplay is pretty robust. It doesn't ask a lot of you to deal with it. And also there's ways to just straight up counteract it if you have snare breakers and stuff.
Yeah,
you just don't even have to you don't even have to move if you have that. So that's nice. I mean, there are bosses in this pool that require very specific positioning for quite a bit of time, like probably longer than the roots are going to accommodate. So you just have to, be careful, break them quick. Or, I mean, if you got to eat the stun to stand in the Soki circle on the Iridicron fight, then what else are you going to do? Right?
That's the one that I thought of that actually, that was an example. I've done that plays a couple of times, and I've definitely had it happen this week where I would just like, all right, I'm sitting here. This is what's happening.
Yep. It's just, it's sort of a harm reduction sort of concept at that point.
Yeah.
And bursting, there's a couple bursting traps that I've encountered so far. You mentioned Throne of the Tides. There's also that padding group of snapdragons. It used to be murlocs in the old version of the dungeon. Now it's snapdragons, and that's a pretty big pack. And if they all die close together, that's a lot of bursting. Yeah. And they're already hurting you pretty bad. They have a bleed, or they have some kind of like stacking damage that goes out. So that's a little tricky. And also, I wonder if this will change, but in a couple spots in Dawn of the Infinite, definitely in Galakron's Fall, and I'm trying to think if there's any in Murazan's Rise as well, but I haven't done it yet this week. There's spots where mobs kind of split off into smaller versions, or they like summon smaller versions of themselves or whatever, and those smaller versions have on death effects, like they were dropping Sanguine last week too. So that can sort of get out of control if you have a big pull and you killed a bunch of stuff and then it turns into other little stuff that you then kill even more quickly. That can start stacking up. So you do have to pay attention to it. Bursting is not as bad as it used to be, but it will still kill you, and it can still result in even like out of combat deaths. Right. So just be aware of that. But I did like 4 keys last night, and now granted I'm mostly in the teens, mid-teens, whatever. The only key that felt difficult was we did an 18 Throne of the Tides, and I think Throne of the Tides is shaping up to be one of the harder dungeons. Also, kind of a wonky comp where I didn't have a ranged DPS, which was not ideal, and I will probably not be repeating that if I can avoid it in that particular dungeon. Plus, it's the thing of it's the first Tyrannical week of the season. It's a big learning experience. Yeah. If you're trying to do a 17, 18 Tyrannical boss for the first time, and Throne of the Tides is significantly reworked. Like those bosses are much different than what we're used to from Cataclysm, especially the last boss. So, for me, it's like I need to kind of learn that stuff by doing and by sort of putting the puzzle pieces together with the group that I have. And I learned a lot last night from the keys that I did for sure. And I guess it's always the exciting part of early in the season. It can be frustrating when you spend an hour in a dungeon and don't walk away with any rating, but that's also why I like to kind of have a group with social stakes and everybody is there looking out for each other. Everybody's trying to learn together, just to avoid any kind of frustration. I mean, something gets messed up or whatever, or something gets called out and doesn't get acted upon. Well, then, I don't know, you just got to take a deep breath and reset it and go, okay, let's try it this way or whatever. So that's, for me, that's always the beginning of the season, especially with Tyrannical. I'm glad it's not like some seasons we had early in Shadowlands where it's like the first week is tyrannical, we're super undergeared, everything is mega punishing, and then
no one has patience
just
for anything.
walking away. Yeah, like maybe after, maybe we've wiped in this boss so many times that like somebody literally just has to go.
Yeah.
I don't think we're in that zone with this, so it's nice. I'm looking forward to kind of mastering this dungeon pool and, getting teleports and all that stuff. Feedback I'm hearing from people who do a lot more keys than me, or that like this season feels good. It feels easier than last season, things of that nature. So I think it's great. I mean, in my opinion, the Keystone dungeon system, it scales infinitely for a reason, right? So if the game is going to present you tangible rewards up to like level 20, and then there's this top end, region-wide scene of like who can do the highest dungeons that is very elite, fine, then, the track up to 20 doesn't have to be mega punishing. If you're a seasoned Keystone runner, then you shouldn't have to be sweating it out as to whether or not you're going to get your teleports if you just put the pulls in, right? That's my personal feeling on it, because there's always that next rank. You could always +1 it up to like a certain point where the math just no longer works. So I don't know. I do feel like they've pulled back a lot on the overall complexity and difficulty of getting to that level, stretching out where the affixes come in, getting rid of the seasonal affix concept. All that stuff has helped a lot, because I want to be excited about learning this stuff and accomplishing it and getting the stuff I want out of the game and out of my subscription. I don't want to be dreading trying to get it done before, a time limit.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that overall this dungeon pools felt very good. I do want to, before we move on to what else is happening this week, highlight the hotfixes for Mythic Plus, so we just live in Mythic Plus realm for a little bit.
It makes sense.
Because some of these are just very relevant to the comments you were just making about this feeling like a really good season. We're already seeing pretty dramatic shifts and changes to this Mythic Plus pool, not changing dungeons, but to bosses. Taldazar is what they started off with. They increased the enemy forces count that's required for it, which I actually hit just earlier today when I was running a Mythic Plus through a Taldazar, and the tank sort of got to the end and went, oh, I guess this route doesn't work anymore. I still need 20% more mobs, and we sort of had to run around and find mobs to pull to do that. So everyone's routes are going to have to shift as far as what they were planning for Taldazar, at least what they ran last week, so just keep that in mind. Toxin Swords.
Yeah, I did this week to week. Yeah. So I just want to chime in on this a little bit, because the changes are a bit different. What we ended up doing was, because we just straight up did the BFA route, and if you remember the kind of the standard BFA route, we did that last week and it was the same percentage. What we did this week was we grabbed like an extra pack leading to zombie boss. And then we did the padding pack with the Dinomancer and the Dinos before last boss. Yeah,
that's the one I'm seeing people start doing. Yeah.
Yeah, and that ended up being exact count pretty much. If we were over, it wasn't by, an entire pull. It was just a mob within that last pull or whatever.
Right.
But they did, I think the nerfs, the tuning changes have made that a bit more palatable to actually finally kill those mobs like on purpose.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different, but the overall routing felt still basically the same. It's just once you get to sort of the end of the process, you got to make sure you fill the bar up. So I didn't think it was too onerous or anything to have to do that. I thought it was okay. I would prefer not to. I liked the route that I knew from 5 years ago, but hey, I didn't think it was bad.
Yeah, I will say that overall today felt substantially more difficult than last week, but it was also a higher keystone, so it's hard to judge. Toxic Swords Leaping Thrash no longer triggers Poison Claws on the target, which is very nice. They're already dangerous. Now they're substantially less dangerous. I will say I could definitely feel these swords dying substantially faster on a non-fortified week, which definitely makes it a lot more fun to do those particular trash mobs. They reduced the Juggernaut's Merciless Assault damage by 25%, as well as the Augur's Wild Flame periodic rate was reduced to 1 second from 2 seconds. So I will say that the Augur's periodic rate does feel more dangerous because it's happening every 1 second as opposed to every 2 seconds as far as that damage tick goes. But it is something that I'm glad that they sort of are looking at and addressing all these little twists and turns inside these dungeons. Kisho's Deadeye aim damage reduced by 25%. Frenzied Charge is now avoidable, but inflicts increased damage. This is on Talonja. So that's a nice, I guess, twist that they sort of did there, is allowing people to actually counterplay as opposed to just taking the damage. But if you do take the damage, you're going to feel the damage. I don't know if you noticed this or not, Jason.
Not really. I mean, it's also hard to tell because of the tyrannical and fortified split, because stuff just hits wildly differently in terms of how hard it is. So it's like it's hard to feel the tuning changes, especially with limited information.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. I think Solange, is that one of the Triceratopses?
Yeah.
So basically what I did with that, I guess, I didn't even know that didn't used to be avoidable, because I didn't kill those mobs last week because of percentage, lack of percentage change, right? And we like never killed these mobs in BFA. So last night I just sort of pointed it out the back, and then when the charge animation would start up, I just ran out of the way. So seemed fine. I think the big problem with that pack in the past was just Dinomancer was so deadly, while you were being disrupted by the thrash and the charge, and your tanks running around and trying to point stuff in the right direction, and Dinomancer is just picking a target and nuking it. I think the nerf to Deadeye aim probably helps a lot there to make that pack something that you don't just ignore and just don't go out of your way to avoid, because we did everything in our power. We'd go
back in the day. You'd run all around to avoid pulling that pack. Yeah, you like jump down in the water and go up and around and kill the extra pterodaxes and come back across the bridge if you needed to. Like whatever it took not to fight that pack. And that's just not good tuning, right? If the pack is there, it's like this signature pack in the dungeon. It's very thematically cool, and it's right before the last boss. So making it like not a straight up mistake to fight it, I think is probably a good tuning decision. Yeah. No, I definitely agree. The other thing we saw was Mizumi, who is the other Triceratops' wild thrash range is increased to 100 yards, which means you can't just back away from it. You have to get out from in front of the boss when that's going on. So just keep that in mind as well. But yes, this pack is much more accessible now that you can avoid the charge. They made the Deadeye damage down by 25%. I'm definitely seeing groups that I run with kill it, and it's being much more efficient as far as that goes. Now, my least favorite change of all of the changes for this week is Yasma's Racking Pain can no longer be interrupted and is no longer a curse effect that can be dispelled inside Mythic Keystone dungeons. This sucks. This really sucks. So Racking Pain is a dot that gets cast on a target, and after a couple seconds, it starts ticking, and it will do, on like a 13 or 14, it'll do like 300,000 damage or 350,000 damage. You will see a target's health drop by more than half from this dot on Tyrannical. So the biggest pain with this is when everyone's running out to do their spirits, they often have this dot happening very similarly, either just before or just after. And the spirits halves everyone's health. So this combo has just become a very deadly combo that's now totally unavoidable. You can't interrupt it, and you can't choose to dispel it when it actually lands on a player. What you can still do is spell reflect it, and it still beats the crap out of the boss. So that's a nice thing about it. If you ever happen to have it cast on your tank, or if your tank's the last one left alive, and they can spell reflect, by all means, you can kill the boss from like 5 or 6 million hit points by just continuously spell reflecting this ability onto them. But Racking Pain is a spell that I think we're really going to have to watch out for as we get into higher keystones, because I think you're going to see groups just get it cast on a player, and if that player makes any mistakes, they're dead. This fight very much feels like a totally unforgiving, if you clip one spider one time, you're dead. That's what this fight is now. And I think that's unfortunate. I think there should be more counterplay to this fight, because you're going to be looking at tyrannical fights like this taking 5 or 6 minutes to kill this boss. And if that's the case, you're going to have players having to avoid a lot of spiders and healers having to heal through a lot of damage through this entire period of time. It's just to me, it's the worst Mythic Plus boss to face at the moment. In my opinion, is Yasma. It's just really not comfortable for anyone, and it's dangerous, super dangerous.
Yeah, I think the bar for execution on this fight was already pretty high when you could just interrupt Racking Pain, and Racking Pain was cast at such an interval that really one player could handle it, I think.
Yep.
And yeah, being able to reflect it is awesome, except she casts it at a random target, which means
she doesn't favor tanks unless there's only a tank.
No. Yeah, it's usually not going to be at your warrior tank. I mean, I think other warriors can get spell reflect, but like, what are the odds that it's going to be effective to, it's just the odds are not, and that's the only really thing you can do to it. So if you don't have any warriors, then you can't avoid these. It is going to be tough. So it's going to be, that might be another tuning knob for this dungeon, like they don't want it to be a free dungeon. They don't want it to be a layup. And I understand that. This change seems a little overwrought. I feel like this boss was just already hard enough. Yeah. Even if you could totally control Racking Pain, just because of the disruption of all the spiders and everything, it's hectic, man. I mean,
the spiders do more than half your health.
BFA, and
if you walk over a spider, it will do 60% of your health with that one spider hit.
Yep. And the longer the fight goes on, the more of them are out, and then you got to just move farther and farther, and it's more and more disruptive. So I don't know. We'll have to keep an eye on it and see, but I wouldn't be surprised to see this maybe, end up getting some more tuning changes.
I agree.
As people have to deal with it more, and on higher and higher difficulties.
Yeah. Yeah. This change going from last week to this week, where like literally killing the boss without this hotfix and then killing the boss with this hotfix, it was like substantially more difficult. And I was like, that's not good. That's not good at all. I think it should definitely still be dispellable. You can make it uninterruptible. That's fine if you want to do it that way. And make it so, healers have to use mana and have to actually, or whoever has to use mana and has to actually use a global to get rid of it and be paying attention to get rid of it. That's fine. But to make it basically just uninterruptible damage that is going to happen to a player, and it does half of their health, when so many other things in this fight do half of your health, and if any of them overlap, you're just dead. I think it's a bit too unforgiving. So I'd like to see more tuning happen to this. Priestess Alonza also got herself some tuning. Corrupted Blood inflicts damage every 2.5 seconds, up from 3 seconds. So you do feel this too. That fight is still very manageable. I wouldn't say that it's a fight. I mean, it's a fight where the biggest thing is killing the Spirit of Gold before it eats up all of the blood puddles, so that you don't end up with no one able to actually do damage to the boss, and the boss just healing off of everyone every single intermission phase. And they did buff the Spirit of Gold's health by 33%, and it does still feel like a manageable add to sort of kill, as long as you have some stuns and knockbacks and that kind of stuff to deal with each one as they come out. But I think this overall has been a good tuning change. I think the fight still feels dangerous. It doesn't feel like a gimme, and that's good. But nothing in this fight is like hyper unforgiving, other than, hey, you didn't kill the Spirit of Gold, or someone didn't step into a puddle and do the mechanic properly. Which I've run into. I've run into a couple of groups now where people just didn't know they needed to collect the blood puddles before she did her transfusion to be able to actually kill the boss quickly. So, yeah, I mean, good to see.
Right, which is funny to us grizzled vets who, this is an old dungeon. It's a new dungeon to a lot of people, but to us, it's like, oh yeah, priestess, okay. Kill the ad, stun it up. All right, everybody go get a blood. All right, watch the boss kill herself. Okay, repeat until she's dead, right? But yeah, it's, there's a big chunk of players that this is a new dungeon to them. So, those kind of things that we learned, pretty quickly back in 2018, I'm sure they'll learn quickly as well. But, that is kind of funny. To me, it feels like we were just in Ataldazar doing that keystone on a regular basis. Like, it does not really seem like it was that long ago. Now, granted, I'm saying 5 years ago, and really it rotated out at the end of 2020, right? We're in that expansion for 2 years. We didn't have rotating pools, but it is kind of weird going back to those BFA dungeons, because it feels like we were just in them to me.
I'm with you. My memory's very fresh and sharp on a lot of those ones too. Murzon's Rise, they definitely felt that in Tyrannical Week things were not tweaked properly. So Tyr the Infinite Keeper got nerfs to Radiant Barrier, both to the actual absorb damage reduction, as well as the refresh damage, both got nerfed. The time stream anomalies untwist damage reduced by 20%, as well as the time displacement reduced the creature's health by an additional 10%. Time displacement on death damage effect reduced by 50%. They increased the cooldown on double tap and triple strike. They resolved an issue that would cause double tap and triple strike to cast on unintended players. That's probably the largest fix that they went in and did. So it's overall all good changes to the tier fight. Glad that they are basically going, yeah, Tyrannical, this is going to be a little bit hard. Let's actually back this off a bit for players to be able to enjoy this fight. And then Chronolord Dios also got the health reduced by 20%, by 10%, and infinite corruption damage reduced by 20%. So Verzon's Rise is an easier dungeon as of yesterday, with hotfixes that came through to sort of tweak those numbers back into place.
Yeah, I'm glad that they're just doing that right away. You know, these were, I guess, some of the biggest question marks is the Dawn of the Infinite wings as keystones, because you know the dungeon's trying to solve or not solve the problem, but it's trying to present a much different experience as a mega dungeon than it is as 2 keystone wings, right? So
yeah, the bosses have different mechanics.
Yeah, right. Like they need to. Yeah, for sure. They're presenting different challenges. So you know, we saw in Shadowlands, we saw Tazavesh get really massively kind of reworked in terms of routing and stuff shortly after it was released. I don't feel like these dungeons need that too much. There's maybe some weird behavior with the way certain events kind of fire and then take you through the dungeon, but overall I don't think that like the routing and stuff is a huge problem. But you know, I think that the boss tuning is always sort of that unknown when you have a mega dungeon coming in as a keystone and seeing how players on live are really engaging with it and what they're doing. So I'm glad they're just on it right away. You know, in years past, it would maybe take weeks, if not longer, for obvious outliers to start getting cleaned up. And I don't think they're in that business anymore. I think they want the game to be as fun for as many players as possible, as early as possible. So I'm glad. I mean, this is super early for dungeon tuning changes, in my opinion, but that's a good thing. That's what we want them.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we're going to see with these mega dungeons being split into Mythic Plus dungeons is players right now just needing to learn mechanics when it comes down to how the bosses work, what you're supposed to do. It's not only different on most bosses, on a lot of bosses, from what they were experiencing when it was a mega dungeon. The mechanics are just different. The spells just work differently. The bosses just work differently. But you also have players who probably didn't do the mega dungeon a whole lot, which means these bosses are just probably the least exposed to a lot of players as bosses that you could go do. So it just requires more patience of people trying to figure out and understand what they're doing in these places. So I would definitely recommend watching a guide for these places if that's something you're wanting to learn how to do. Before hopping in, it'll make you feel a lot better. There's a lot of like 6 to 8 minute, breakdowns out there for folks who are trying to figure out how these work. So I'd recommend checking one of those out. Throne of the Tides. They reduced the total number of unstable corruption spawns, and unstable corruption now spawns more consistently in the Abyssal Hall. Yeah, I mean, that's a good change. I'm glad that they made this easier. I will say that the Abyssal Hall, that's the final boss room, is it not?
Yeah, it's that hallway with the yes, it's sort of like a gauntlet type of thing where you have the unstable corruptions keep spawning in, and you kill them, and they spawn more of them. And the big problem is when you kill them, you get a debuff that makes you take more shadow damage or something, and then the big elemental things cast a big hit that, if you're debuffed, will kill you. So reducing the total number of those spawns and making them spawn more consistently is good, because you really need to manage those. You need to fight them deliberately, and you need to time your kills around the various other casts that go out. So I only did this on a 5 before this change came in, and I did this last night, and by the time we got there, we were already pretty demoralized from the earlier bosses, and then we still had to learn how to do the last boss, so it didn't stand out too much. But I do think this is going to be one of the stickier parts of the entire pool this season, just because when you can't control the pace, that's when bad things start happening. Yeah. Coming
out of a fortified week into a non-fortified week with nerfs and bursting, Vicious Snapdragons and Goblin Aquamages, which are the two that Jason and I mentioned, both had their health reduced by 20%. So these things are going to melt compared to what you experienced last week inside of this place. Because not only are they not fortified, they also just got health nerfs, which means bursting is going to be super dangerous. So just pay attention with the Goblin packs, pay attention with the Snapdragon pack. Don't just blow up your team with bursting when you're dealing with that. The Goblin Aquamage's Aqua Blast cast time was increased to 4 seconds, so you get that extra 0.25 seconds of reaction time. The Tainted Guardian's swell damage reduced by 15%, and Najtar's Sentinel's Crushing Depths heal absorb has been reduced by 15%, which is also nice to see. And on the last boss, Azumat, Azumat's Sludge Gushing Ink now properly displays its precast effect, which is just like spurting ink. The Blotting Barrage damage was reduced by 15%. The Blotting Darkness inflicts damage reduced by 25%. And Neptulon's Cleansing Flux duration is increased to 12 seconds. The Foul Bolt now has an 8-second initial cool up, and the Splot Spawn Closer to the the Splotch Spawn Closer, as in they end up being closer to the ink of Azumat when they actually spawn in. So now the biggest thing I want to emphasize for this boss, because this is going to be for a lot of players who might not have done this boss a lot, when you get Neptulon's Cleansing Flux, you have a beam of water hitting your character, and you want to take that and walk through the blotting darkness that's all over the floor and clean it all up. You are literally mopping up darkness off the floor with this ability. That is how that mechanic works. And if you are one of the first two people who get the Cleansing Flux and you don't run over top of all these things and clean up the first blotches that are down, your group's going to have a bad time. Because as soon as you fall behind on this, it gets out of control really quickly, which might be a note about this ability of maybe these things shouldn't happen as frequently as they do, because it gets out of control very fast the moment someone doesn't know how to do this mechanic. So I am glad that they're addressing the damage and the damage reduced, because I did have a group where the first two people just stood still the moment they got the spray on them and didn't clean anything up, and the whole room filled up with darkness very quickly, even though the next, several pairs ran around to clean stuff up, and we could sort of tank through some of that damage to be able to kill the boss, or push the boss to the next phase where you actually get rid of all the darkness before we all died. So just be aware of how the mechanic works, because it's an important one, and I am glad they're making it a little bit more forgiving.
Yeah, this was tough to learn. We needed a few attempts of this. Again, I didn't have a ranged DPS in my group, which really made this a problem with the splotches, whatever the ones are they cast. I can't remember what the name of the ads are, but there's casters. And really what you want to do is try to clump all the ads up and kill them all in about the same spot, so that then the next time you have Cleansing Flux, you can get all this stuff cleaned up. You run out of space really fast in this fight, and the ink hurts pretty bad. So anything to make that read better, make the stuff hurt less, make it easier for players to understand how to clean it up or where to clean it up is huge. It took us a few tries on this to kind of put the pieces together.
Yeah. There's still some other changes that they went through and did. A couple things like Galakrond's Fall, including making Coalesce Momentum's Tainted Sands no longer does immediate damage. It now also has a duration reduced to 7 seconds from 9 to make that a less threatening ability. The Maddening Roar inside Darkheart Thicket now increases the damage dealt by 20% per stack as opposed to 25. The Fell Spite Dominator's Sick Bats, as in attack people with bats, will now command up to 4 bats to attack their target, as opposed to unlimited bats. You can no longer just call in every bat around him to attack a target. It's now specifically 4, which makes that much more manageable to deal with, which is great.
Where was this in 2017?
I know, where was it then, man? It was insane when they were doing it before, because you literally it would just delete someone in your group. Like, that's all. It would just happen. They're gone. Yeah,
especially because the strat was just run all the way up the stairs and get all 4 of the Fell guards. And that's a lot of bats.
It's a lot of bats. Waycrest Manor, they made Matron Alma's Lingering Dread should prefer non-tank players. And they also fixed an issue where the Banquet Steward's Dinner Bell was silencing pets. That's a weird one to me, but it's a thing, so at least it's fixed. And yeah, that's the hotfixes that we had for Mythic Plus stuff. And I know it took us a little while to get through all that, but I really wanted to highlight the early changes that we're getting here, because it's important to go through them for folks to sort of understand not just the mechanics, but where Blizzard's kind of intentions are going with this. So I'm glad to see that that we're moving in a good direction with a lot of this stuff, and people just have to be a little bit patient with other folks learning mechanics and how things are going to work as Blizzard kind of nerfs and changes and shifts some of this stuff around for people. All right.
Yeah, and I mean, Mythic Plus is supposed to be hard, right? I mean, that is part of the thing. It's not normal dungeon. It's not heroic dungeon. It's not even mythic dungeon. It's supposed to be hard, and it's supposed to scale up as you know, your ranks increase. But I don't know. Overall, I think they're off to a pretty good start, and most of the sort of gut punch reaction I've heard from people I talked to has been positive. So, like it's a really strong place to start off the season from, and you know, we have full confidence that they'll continue to tweak and balance it as need be.
Yeah. All right, WoW's 19th anniversary is still running. It goes until December 7th. We still got a couple of weeks left, which I'm super excited about. That's tons of time to take advantage of this 19% increased experience and reputation gain that you get from just logging in and open up the anniversary package that's inside your mailbox. There'll be an item in there that's like a World of Warcraft symbol. You click on that item, it'll actually consume and give you a buff that is permanent on your character for the duration of the event that will increase your reputation experience gain by 19%. I mentioned the trivia question already. Down inside Caverns of Time, there is a dude down there that you can talk to who will ask you a trivia question and grants a good amount of experience for it. So a great passive way to level up characters is just bring your alts down, or your whatever character you want down to the Caverns of Time and park them in front of this guy, and then just log into each one every day and answer the trivia question. What I've noticed is, like 3 trivia questions is a level. So every 3 days you get a level. Which is a lot of levels that are free on a character. So you can push characters up pretty quickly just by doing that. And it's, basically free experience. There's a daily quest to defeat each of the classic world bosses, which gets you some 441 eye level gear. As well as Korok's Revenge, which is the Alterac Valley event that's going on right now, where you can get yourself the Battle Ram or the Frost Wolf Snarler. It's one of the only ways to get like the opposing faction mounts, if that's something you're looking to get. You can actually get out there on your Horde character, complete the Frost Wolf Snarler, and it will give you the Ram on your Alliance character, which is kind of a neat way to do it. So you can actually get those things accomplished for yourself. Doomwalker, the big world boss, is up in Tanaris. That's just outside of the cave that you actually go down into for the Caverns of Time. The Azure World Chiller mount, as well as the Illidari Doomhawk, both drop off of this, as well as the Doomwalker trophy stand toy. I kind of wish there was a Doomwalker little like battler toy that you could get for the Rumble game. I kind of wish that was a thing, because they had the whole Rumble machine added. I think that would have been a fun toy to add. Just start adding things like that, where you get a little Doomwalker Rumble thing that you can turn into the game.
Well, they got to put Doomwalker in Rumble first, and then
I guess so.
Do the crossover.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, I want to just chime in on Doomwalker to say, I'm not entirely sure if the Illidari Doomhawk and the trophy stand toy are just straight up droppable from the boss anymore. Like, the Azure World Filler is 100%. You log in and you kill it and you get it, and happy anniversary, here's your free mount. I believe they moved the Illidari Doomhawk to one of the event vendors, which means you can just go get it. But I don't know if it still has a chance to drop. And same thing with the toy. I don't know if the toy just dropped. I mean, I got all this stuff years ago, and it's not going to ever drop for me again on my account. So I have no real way to verify it. But if you are not getting drops from Doomwalker for previous year rewards like the Doomhawk or the trophy stand, check the vendors out, because it might be on there.
There's a vendor across from the question guy that I think has that mount and that toy on it for time walking badges, the time walking tokens that you can get. I will add something that it's a wish list item here for those Blizzard employees who are listening in at the moment. I want all of the time walking vendors to be in Caverns of Time during this anniversary event. So you could get mounts, toys, pets, whatever it is, from any of the different expansion vendors during this anniversary event, because I think it's just such a cool thing inside Caverns of Time to have all this, reference to time and everything. I think it would make sense for time walking people to all be there as well, so that you can actually earn or purchase, the mounts and stuff that you might want, and it gives people that extra bit of time as opposed to once every, what is it, like 6 or 7 months of whatever the rotation is for their chance to get the thing they want to get. It's that one extra time a year where they can go, oh yeah, Caverns of Time, let's go pick up the thing that I want off the vendor, because they're all down inside Caverns of Time. So that would be cool. That
would be a cool idea and very thematic. Yeah. And you get a bunch of, time walking.
You do. You get a bunch of time walking badges. So. Yeah. So I just felt like it fit, which would be nice. And yeah, there's other things you can buy with badges too. There's like the bronze tinted glasses, a bunch of wands for transforming people into things. There's like corgi battle pet you can get, as well as like different outfits for the corgi. There's the tranquil mechanical yeti costume for your corgi, which is kind of hilarious, as well as like the costume sets for your character, like Edwin Van Cleef dress up costume for you. The inflatable Thunder Fury Blessed Blade of the Windseeker toy is another thing you can get there. So lots of stuff that's available down inside Caverns of Time, and you should definitely check it out. All right, Pilgrim's Bounty is going to kick off. Actually, it is live. It has kicked off. It's live through the 26th. So you've got 4 more days to enjoy Pilgrim's Bounty. This is a great way to take care of your traveler's log, your traveler's journal thing, to get all the extra points that you want to get for going off and spending at the vendor. This is a great way to get some more rewards for that, just by participating in the event. It's also the way to get the Turkinator achievement, as well as the silver-plated turkey shooter. So if you're someone who wants to get that toy, be sure you are participating this time around. And apparently, the Spirit of Sharing buff that you can get for sitting at one of the tables and passing stuff around to get 10% more rep from all sources for an hour does stack with the 19th anniversary 19% and works with Dream Wardens. So be sure that you are picking up that Spirit of Sharing buff and then going around and doing all your dailies and whatnot, because that will certainly help you out a bunch with all of that reputation gain. So take advantage of that as well.
Yeah, it's real nice to have, this long-term 19% rep buff, and now to get an extra 10% on top of that for this week, with a brand new Renown faction out. So I've been taking advantage of this for sure. They did add new sharing tables at the Flight Master in Valdrakken. I know a lot of people probably never go to the Flight Master in Valdrakken, but there is one, and there's a bunch of Pilgrim's Bounty tables right there. So you can easily, restack your buff. It only lasts for an hour or so. And it does clear on death. So, this is one you're going to have to reapply. But I've been taking advantage of this because why not? I've been doing this with all of the weekly stuff and everything else for Dream Wardens. And also I went and got myself a contract, and I've been doing a whole bunch of world quests with a 29% extra rep bonus, and then you get I don't know, 19 rep per world quest you do for Dream Wardens, plus you get 29 extra percent rep for whatever you're actually doing. So it's a lot of rep for sure. There's really like no other big updates, although I think there are some of the I didn't actually look into this, but somebody told me there were turkeys for the Turkinator thing in Onaran Plains as well.
Oh, really?
So
that's awesome.
If you're having problems getting Turkinator done, then you have some more options, I guess. Because it's like timed, right? You have to kill X number of turkeys in X amount of time. So, it's this is a small little 1 week holiday, but I have been taking full advantage of it this year. It's nice when all this timing lines up, with new content and these traditional yearly holidays. It's again, the patch has been out for 2 weeks and a day or 2 days, and I'm at, Renown 18 of 20 without really feeling like I've been grinding it.
Right. Another hotfix we saw come in was in relation to creatures. The unpulled rare elites in the Forbidden Reach in Zaralak Cavern should now despawn after 15 minutes unless players are in the immediate vicinity. This is hilarious to me because I did have this happen on, I think it was Sunday. I opened up my map inside Zaralak Caverns and there was like 15 or 16 rares on my map. I was like, holy crap, in this one area. So yes, they are going to despawn if there are people around. I think makes sense to not have just this ginormous pile of rares inside one corner, because they also fixed an issue causing rare elites in Forbidden Reach, Zaralak Caverns, and Emerald Dream to not award credit to players in a raid group. Yeah, I also wonder if that had something to do with me not getting loot from killing the world boss last week. I don't know. Maybe. Who knows?
Oh, maybe. Could be. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, this seems kind of weird, but I guess the thing about it is you don't want all the rares to be up at one time if there's, no players around, because then players aren't going to naturally funnel in towards whatever rares are up, right?
Yeah.
Like this way, okay, nobody interacted with this rare, all right, it despawns. Now there's one fewer rare up, which means there are fewer options for players to go to. You want, even if people are not in any kind of formal group, even just like an ad hoc group that forms around a rare or something, like you want them all to be moving in the same direction, because more than one player is supposed to be fighting these things. So it's weird on its face. It's really weird. And I'm like, why are they doing this? But then I think about it, and it's got to be something like that, is that they want the rares to attract the attention of the players in the zone, not to be just a whole bunch of markers that nobody's ever going to do anything with.
Yeah. Okay. Heroic Farak got some buffs inside the raid. Apparently, it is not as challenging and satisfying as they want the end of Immutable's Dreams Hope raid to be. So they increased Burning Scales damage by 40%. There is now an additional occurrence of Blaze during Stage 3. Blaze damage was increased by 40%. And damage of colliding with the swirling firestorm was also increased by 60%. So they have definitely chosen to I guess, violence. They've chosen violence when it comes to Farak, to be like, hey, you know what? This isn't as hard as we want it to be. This is now going to be a harder fight for folks who are looking to clear it. So just keep that in mind if you were working on Farak. Farak's now a lot harder on heroic difficulty. So got to factor that in.
I hate this. I mean, it's sour grapes, yes, but I just hate it. Like, what this means is that the players who needed it the least are the ones who benefited from this undertuning. And the players for whom ahead of the curve is an achievement or a goal are going to suffer. I guess it'll be interesting to see how these abilities in particular get tuned over the course of the next few weeks and months. I'm of two minds about it. I kind of feel like stuff should never get buffed once it hits live, but if there's a real tuning problem, then I guess the best thing to do is make the adjustment quickly, right? Like, pull the Band-Aid off right away. You can't just let it be undertuned for too long and then buff it. That makes less sense than doing it right away. But my preference would be that just not to do it at all. And if you missed the mark with Heroic Farak, then hey, the mark was missed. It's just, the players who were blasting out ahead of the curve in the first week, it wouldn't have mattered probably if this stuff was, if these buffs were live or not. They would have been killing it regardless. And for, the vast majority of people who engage with raiding, it's now they're the ones who are going to be really impacted by this change, which was sort of the point, I guess. But I don't know. Just philosophically, when I read these notes, the first week of a new raid, I just go, well, that sucks. Like, how else am I supposed to feel about it, right?
Yeah, I hear you on that. All right, user interface. First of all, there was a lot of PvP passes to character classes. So if you're a PvP player, be sure to check in your class changes, because there was a lot that they went through and changed on different PvP classes. But user interface-wise, they restricted the add-on functions that allowed for in-combat distance checking between players. And this was something they intended to have go live with 10.2, but unfortunately it didn't. So they're apologizing for the confusion and inconvenience that this might be providing to add-on authors. But yeah, they don't want add-ons that ping the distance between your character and another character regularly. Remember, you can still do /range. That's still a thing in the game. You can still do that. But when it comes to add-ons that do it automatically, they are limiting that. So just be aware that might break some weak auras and things that you were using. All right.
Yeah, this is a tough one because, like, obviously this sucks for, add-on developers and for players who use add-ons. And, we've seen all kinds of different approaches to this type of technique over the years, including like the radar, which they can't do in instance groups anymore, but you still have it with like outdoor world stuff sometimes if you run certain add-ons.
Yeah.
My thing with this is it's okay if this is the way that the devs want to approach it, fine, but then you have to make the fights read properly. If I'm in an 8-yard danger zone or whatever, then that should be clear to me and to everybody around me. and I think they've gotten better with that over the years, certainly to the point where, like, if there's something you're supposed to spread X yards apart for, rarely are you like having to guess at that, right? There's some kind of visual indicator of like, there's a ring around your character, or there's stuff that prevents you from standing on top of each other, or something of that nature. That's where this type of add-on functionality was really useful in making the range radars, or just making a display. What some add-on authors went to once the radar got broken was just a display of like the characters' names that are too close to you, and it, make it turn red or whatever. Yeah, this is a thing that Blizzard can eliminate the need for add-ons to do this stuff by making encounters that read well, and by presenting players with the information to play around those types of mechanics, and not relying on radars in the first place. So that is, we'll see. We'll see how that plays out for the rest of Emirdrasil, and we'll see how it plays out in the future. That to me, the onus is on them at that point. If you want to restrict add-ons from doing it, then you got to make sure that there shouldn't be a reason why an add-on feels like it needs to do it.
Yeah, I think something that would help with that is something that I've felt for a long time now, which is standardizing the circles that go around players to being a color that is representative of whether that is a good circle or a bad circle. We often see spell effect colors tied to whatever the boss is, and whatever the spell school that the boss is using tends to be what affects whether or not it's a red circle or a purple circle or a green circle or an orange circle or whatever it is. I do wonder whether or not there'd be a benefit, and it would help a lot for players if they went, no, like purple circle or pink circle are always beneficial in some way. Red circle, green circle, orange circle, always bad in some way, to sort of help players mechanically understand when they see it what that's supposed to mean. There is a certain amount of learning raid fights to sort of sort that out, but I do remember on many occasions times where players have gone, is that a good circle or a bad circle? I don't know. Which one is it? Is it good? Am I stacking with this? Am I spreading? Am I supposed to help? Am I not? You just don't know until you experience that mechanic. And everyone in the raid has to learn that, right? So it's one of those cases of like, if you're part of a raid team that's doing normal raiding, it can take a long time for 30 people to all learn what that circle does, even if you tell them numerous times, because they haven't seen it or recognized whatever it is. Whereas if you just knew green circle means stack, purple circle means spread, cool, right? People can consistently learn that over their time playing World of Warcraft. So I've always wondered whether or not there was some benefit to starting to standardize some of those colorations on those spells. But you never know.
Yeah, I think they've done a good job with shapes, and having like we call them Kill Jaden spikes.
Those
that was
help,
the first fight we really saw them. Yeah, stuff like that I think reads really well. And also, the problem I think with color coding is you could potentially have more accessibility issues, right? So if I think calling out different shapes is probably a good way to go.
I mean, you're seeing a square that is targeted on a player is always a stack up or something.
Yeah, something like that. Or I think you do stuff with different edges, right? Like harder edges or softer edges, and just kind of that whole language. And it's an ongoing thing because you want to, you want to make fights look cool, and you want to introduce new types of VFX. We've seen that a lot in Dragonflight with like the Shadow Flame looking effect and everything. But these other things have to be a concern as well. Like, not only does the fight have to read, in terms of players being able to tell what is happening and what they're supposed to be doing, but also you have that accessibility factor where players who don't maybe see the colors as a developer intended need to be able to read the mechanic too. So it's it's a tough challenge for sure, but I feel like they've made a lot of progress with this over the years, but it's sort of that never-ending battle thing, right? Because they're always going to come up with some new thing that they want to do and some different kind of gimmick to present to a player. But then all of these other questions come into play, and then you sort of go back around the circle, Yeah.
All right. There was a post that came out this week notifying players that there's going to be a restriction put on purchasing the WoW token. This is going to go into effect after November 21st, 2023. And it's already in effect now. As of now, it's already in effect. And basically, if you have not purchased with actual money WoW time, at least 30 days of WoW time, in the last 6 years, then you are not going to be able to purchase WoW tokens in game for currency. So essentially for gold. And this to me instantly read as, hey, we don't want bot accounts or, farming accounts, basically the negative kind of accounts, being created, having someone hand them 3 million gold, having that account then buy a whole bunch of time tokens and just never have to actually pay a subscription or sign up for anything or do anything like that. They can essentially just have that account live on in perpetuity doing some sort of negative experience for the WoW community out there. So this is a way of going, hey, here's another barrier. If you're going to make these accounts, you're going to have to commit some actual money for every single one of these accounts that you're making so that you actually, there's that one extra barrier that they're throwing up. Now, there are concerns that I've heard through discussing this in Discords with people where there are players who, probably have not actually used real money on their WoW account in the last 6 years. They've just been able to gather enough gold that they've sort of kept their account alive and active. It is having to spend $15. That is what this is requiring you to do. You have to spend $15. That is, something that you'd have to commit to doing to maintain your WoW account if you're inside that situation. There's also the concern of countries where it might be hard to get the ability to buy WoW time at the moment. I'm fairly certain you can buy WoW time cards online, and that those count towards this and that you'd be okay as far as doing that. So hopefully that's a solution for some folks. But yeah, in my opinion, this is a good step. It's something that is pretty lenient. Asking a player who hasn't paid any money towards the game in the last 6 years to spend $15 is not, I don't think, asking a lot. And it's a new way to sort of counteract these negative accounts, and I think that's a good thing too.
Yeah, you're right. I also think that this also sucks. Like, it's both things at the same time. Like, you have the token for a couple different reasons, right? And one of them is for players to be able to play the game without paying cash, right? If they play the game enough, whatever, they can obtain gold, and then they can exchange the in-game gold for game time. And obviously a lot of players like that option. So I don't know. This sucks for the players that are affected, that have to now make the decision of, okay, do I pay the $15, or like which accounts do I pay for if they have multiple licenses or whatever? The gold makers, the people who for whom the game really is about, like, amassing gold. I'm sure this is, a very obnoxious. I mean, the mainstream player is probably not very affected by this, and it probably does give them a lot of tools to root out accounts that were made for the purposes of, funneling gold, moving it around, doing stuff that they don't want players doing with gold, and bot accounts or what have you. It's sort of, they don't explicitly say why they're doing this, and a part of that is because you don't want to, tip off bots or other bad actors to your kind of methods, right? You want to play it as close to the vest as possible, but I wish that they weren't doing this, but I guess, like, if you've been playing WoW without any cash transactions since 2017, I don't know. I don't really feel like it's that big of a deal in a vacuum, but it's kind of what it represents, because of like what the WoW token is and is for, and why they put it in the game, or one of the reasons they put it in the game. It's just it will affect some players, and that is not good. But I guess we'll see. Does this accomplish their ends? I don't know. I don't know how many they have the numbers, right? So they could probably see how many accounts are out there that have never had a cash transaction. From that you can kind of infer that those accounts are probably extra licenses, or there's gold being funneled to those accounts from other to those licenses from accounts that have a ton of gold on them or whatever. could also be maybe part of the whole groundwork for setting up for warbands and having to unify economies and gold and stuff like that as well. I don't know. This does nothing for me. I mean, I do not typically pay for my game time with gold anyway, so this means less than nothing to my experience, but I don't know. When they do stuff like this, it always just feels bad to me.
It's tricky, right? It's tricky to judge what's going to be best for the game's health overall versus, asking players to spend $15 for the first time in 6 years potentially.
Yeah, and nobody knows for sure, right? So they just have to go with what they think is best.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of what it comes down to. Okay, that's the restriction of the WoW token stuff. So we're going to talk a bit about the PTR that is now live for folks who want to dive in and try out some PTR stuff. Follower dungeons are in fact available on PTR. All 8 of the original Dragonflight dungeons are available on normal difficulty for you to queue up solo or with partners. And the rewards at the end of the dungeon will be that of essentially having a full party of players. So if you queue solo and run one of these dungeons on normal, you'll get all of the loot for yourself and don't have to share it with anybody. So that is certainly something that is cool checking out if you're someone on the PTR who wants to check that out. The Reclaiming Gilneas event will not be available for testing on PTR, so you're not going to be able to see that if that's something you're looking forward to. And players noticed this first, but they did in fact put out a sort of description post describing it, that dragon riding mounts are going to move at 80% of their maximum speed in the old world. They're restricting the speed of dragon riding outside of the Dragon Isles in order to not make travel times on old world continent trivially short. We believe 80% dragon riding speed will strike a balance between giving players exciting and engaging traversal while still providing a sense of immersion. Dragon Isles continent is pretty massive compared to some of our older continents, so we need to adjust speed accordingly. I get this. I think players are going to notice this for the first few months and then probably forget about it. But I understand it, I guess, that, yeah, there's a lot of zones that you could essentially take off on your dragon, like Silithus, you could take off on your dragon riding mount and be from one end to the other in about 8 seconds. And that would be that, because the zone is pretty small and they didn't design the zone for this kind of dynamic flight. They didn't even design the zone for flight. A lot of the zones back then weren't even designed for flight.
Right, like originally. Yeah.
So just keep in mind that, they are tweaking this. It is something that's going to feel bad at first, but it's a change that's necessary to not just completely trivialize traveling in the outdoor world. So I think Flight already did enough of that. What are you feeling?
I have a feeling that in practice, this isn't really going to feel very much different at all.
I agree.
Because you're still moving very fast. You're moving way faster than traditional flying speed.
Yeah.
And these zones are tiny and flat compared to Dragonflight zones. Part of the genius of Dragonflight's design was that the exterior world was designed to dovetail with dragon riding. So you have these massive, expansive, super vertical zones that aren't really like most of the rest of the game. And yeah, especially if you're in like the level up zones and stuff, some of those zones are minuscule compared to a Dragonflight zone. So I don't think this is it. Like, yeah, you look at the number go down and you go, oh, I don't want the number to go down. I want the number to go up or at least stay the same. I want to go as fast as I possibly can. But also, I mean, from the tech perspective, who knows what starts happening? There might have been some throttle that they had to put in place because it might have been possible to move between zones too quickly or something. It was presenting some kind of tech challenge. So, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think it probably won't be very long before you don't hear about any of this anymore. The initial complaints were like, come on, Blizzard, what are you doing? But like, there are probably gameplay and tech reasons why they did this. And I don't think in practice that it's going to affect anybody's experience too much. So it's fine. Yeah. I've heard good stuff about follower dungeons too. I haven't done any. I don't know if I'll get into PTR and do it, but like we were saying last week, just long overdue. And, feedback has been decently positive so far. It's a huge feature to just like put in a .5. So
yeah,
here we are. And I guess if you're interested in it, probably a good thing to go test out and give some feedback on. If that's kind of if that's a feature that has a lot of value for you, then I would say probably get in there, especially while the PTR is young.
Yeah, agreed. The Outland Cup is actually available for testing on the PTR. It's going to be running until the 29th of November, and you can essentially mount up and do dragon riding around Outland. There are 13 races that are also placed inside Outland for you to participate in, as well as new rewards for purchases with the Riders of Azeroth badges. So if you're someone who wants to get out in Outland and fly around there, you can do that if that's something you want to do. Players that haven't unlocked dragon riding yet will be able to fly the races and the race courses on loaned dragon riding mounts, so you can still participate if you want to participate. We also saw the new character hair colors for trolls, new skin color for Draenei, and some customization for Warlock, Tyrant, and Dark Lair demons go up on the PTR, as well as the Soar ability for Drakthir. So Drakthir now essentially having the dragon riding, granting you access to Vigor and all the dragon riding abilities through Soar is now a thing. So keep that in mind. If you're going to be playing around there on your Drakthir, you can have a lot of fun soaring around without a mount. Multiple class talents that were previously Shadowlands Covenant abilities, such as Convoke, Divine Toll, and Sepsis, have had their spell visuals updated to their class kit to make them actually less Shadowlands-like and fit more in with your class and what your class's kit is. So yeah, all those changes happened as well. They've done other art updates for the predicting and absorbs on unit frames, which makes me very happy as a healer that they're starting to dip their toes into, hey, you know what? When there's an incoming heal, we're going to actually have some art demonstrate that. When there's a big absorb shield on someone, we're going to have some art demonstrate that. I think that could be really fun with what they're playing around with. And there's also the limited time Traveler's Log activities will now be marked with the holiday ones, when marked with time left shown on it, so you can actually see when those holidays are wrapping up and how much longer you have to participate in that, which makes me happy. I hope they add a when it starts thing too, because it is also one of those things where I consistently will open it up and go, oh, hey, there's stuff for Darkmoon Faire. When is that starting again? Oh, it's, 12 days away or whatever it is, right? By looking at my calendar to be able to do it. It would just be nice if they just had it inside the unit frame of when it was taking place for you to be able to actually participate in that. So yeah, lots of PTR stuff going on, and they're starting to dip their toes into some of the fun things like that, the solo queue dungeons for normal. And yeah, we'll see what they progress and continue to do over time over there on PTR.
Yeah, I just want to say about the class talents that were Covenant abilities, I love this change. One of the things I really didn't like about Shadowlands from jump and the original pitch and the original look at it was I didn't really feel like the Covenants were tied into WoW. It was just too different, and there were these links to some other things we had seen or that we knew from elsewhere, but it was too idiosyncratic. It didn't feel like it belonged. And so carrying that stuff forward, I think, has been a little weird too. I don't know. Maybe I'll feel differently about it in a few years, but Shadowlands felt so detached from the core of what I like about WoW. So I'm glad this was on the radar to get this into Dragonflight and to start redoing some of these visuals. And I don't know, maybe this could be an opportunity for a glyph or something. Like if you really like the Shadowlands visual for your ability, then that would be cool if they added a way to just toggle that. But yeah, for me personally, it's not like, I don't know. I don't need to forget that Shadowlands ever occurred, but I don't necessarily want the classes to still reflect those Covenant abilities visually. Yeah. That's just my personal preference.
If they're rolling it into the class, then it should be part of the class. It shouldn't be something that is carried over. So I think it's important that if they're going to keep these abilities around, that they really fit thematically with what your class is and what your class fantasy is. All right. We got an email. It comes in from Justin, who says, hey, y'all, I'm newer to the podcast, less than 20 episodes in. I have a question. I'm new to the game. I want to get into a routine of getting the checklist going, but I have no idea what the checklist should consist of. I've heard you guys talk about getting your weekly things done and just wondered what exactly those were. Any help you could provide would be greatly appreciated, be it from you or me, pointing me in the right direction. I love the way you guys run the podcast. Very informative with a great flow. Looking forward to hearing from you all. Happy adventuring, Justin. Well, Justin, yeah, we started sort of glossing over some of the weekly stuff. That is sort of been retired based off of the content that's been released patch over patch for this expansion. But it is important to go out and get your Aiding the Accord quest. That's kind of the first thing you do when you log in inside Veldraken at max level is you pick up Aiding the Accord, which requires you to get 3,000 reputation with factions, period, just like in general, 3,000 reputation. And that's the choose. That's the Super Bloom or the, this week it's Grand Hunt as your two options you're choosing between, where we emphasize choosing Super Bloom. That will get you a large amount of reputation for the week, as well as some other rewards for the week when you complete aiding the Accord. So that's one of your weeklies you want to get done. Super Bloom is another weekly. So this aiding the Accord directs you to other weeklies. Grand Hunt is another weekly. So when you actually pick up aiding the Accord and it shows you the two different options, you're picking Super Bloom because you're going to want to do it no matter what. But whatever that other option is another thing you can do that is a weekly. Or something that sort of is a weekly as far as the reward goes, but typically things like the Grand Hunt, you can do multiple hunts in a week. You can go and help the Tuskar with their feast multiple times a week if you wanted, but you only get the rewards for doing that the one time. So keep that in mind. The big rewards only happen the one time. The time shift thing that happens in just northeast of Veldraken is another weekly thing. There's a quest that directs you there. You can pick up a quest there. To sort of help out with a bunch of weird time anomalies that are taking place and get yourself a weekly reward from that. Dream Surges, you'll have a big icon on your map when you open your map up that's very Night Elfy kind of, it's a big icon for Dream Surges. If you mouse over that, it'll basically highlight all the world quests that are on the map, implying that each of those world quests will give you some dream dust that contributes towards completing the quest for that. So you basically fly out there to the Dream Surge, pick up your quest that's there. It requires you to get 200 Dream Dust. You go around and do a bunch of world quests. That'll get you the 200 Dream Dust. You turn that in. It gets you a currency you can spend at a vendor that's essentially the person you picked up the quest from that lets you buy gear from that vendor. And there's another vendor that's next to that one that's actually buy stuff for Dream Dust that you can buy other gear from. So or pets or mounts or other things like that. So there's a few overlapping things that have happened over time where there was like the elemental anomaly thing, and then there was the time anomaly thing, and there's been all these sorts of like different patches have had a weekly event added. The thing that they did with this most recent 10.2 is they upped the rewards from those things to make them all kind of sit more relevant, which is good. So that's sort of what we talk about when we sort of gloss over the do your weekly stuff, because your weekly stuff is good, is like the stuff that's sort of, if you went back far enough, you'd hear the early parts of Dragonflight where we talk about the first event going on, and then you'd hear the next part of Dragonflight, we hear the next event going on, et cetera, as we sort of work our way down through it. So that's the weekly stuff we talk about. There are other rewards like picking up the PvP quests, and there was a dungeon quest for a while, which is no longer a thing, where you could do some heroic dungeons and get rewards from that. They phased that out. The world boss is a weekly thing. LFR is a weekly thing as far as loot rewards go. So yeah, just be sure you're... Oh, and of course, whatever the actual weekly quest is, that could be one for completing 10 world quests. This week it's for Arena Skirmish. It's the Arena Skirmish bonus events. Whatever that bonus event is taking place, could be time walking, tend to be another way to get additional rewards for your character as well. So that all sort of falls into the weekly stuff category.
Yeah, it's a little strange because the buffs to Time Rifts and Dream Surges in 10.2 actually make them the best sources of item level for like outdoor stuff, which is just strange because they're not technically, current patch content.
Yeah.
But it kind of depends on what your goal is, I guess. Like, your checklist should reflect your goals. If your goal is to gear up, then Time Rifts and Dream Surges should be at the top of your list. The Time Rift event starts at the top of every hour. So you need to be out there by Soradormi at the top of the hour to pick up the quest at reset. And, you just have to participate. Basically, what you have to do is defeat the anomaly boss, which is just on a timer. So if you don't really care about the cosmetics and stuff from that event, then you can just sort of do whatever, do your objectives, and just wait out the timer and then go kill the boss in the portal at the center of that area. And then, the first one a week will guarantee you a token you can turn in for a piece of 450 gear. Well, it doesn't start at 450, but it goes up to 450. It starts at 428, but it goes all the way up to 450. So that's, out of the gate, you can get that stuff going very quickly. And you can also catalyze that stuff into Season 2 set. So if your goal is to gear up, but you're sort of, starting from scratch, then easily getting 2-piece and then 4-piece in back-to-back weeks is, even though it's outdated set bonuses, it's better than not having that at all. So That's good. And yeah, dream searches rotate, and you can kind of do them at your own pace, really. It's dream search coalescences and stuff that you're collecting. You only need 100 of it actually for the repeating quest, and you can get a bunch of that just from flying around. You'll see the green dream search orbs everywhere, and again, you get that 450 token. Like if you could do that quickly and start leveling that stuff up with flight stones and with the I think they just use whelpling crests.
Yeah, just whelp crests.
Yeah, they get upgraded really quick, and then other than that, yeah, living in Emerald Dream is pretty much your best bet. Yeah, like you mentioned, the Super Bloom is just a must. You just have to go do that every week right now. And the quest to plant the 5 Dream Seeds, you have to just do those right away at reset, get your 441s, and then those are obviously upgradable too. But they'll be a little bit more expensive to upgrade as you go. But that that's the gear piece in terms of like solo gear, like unstructured play, like I'm just playing the game by myself. What am I doing? If your goals are more related to like reputation or collections, then you sort of have to zero in on a particular faction or a particular activity. There was a lot of primalist stuff in the 10.0 cycle, the elemental storms and whatnot, that are just not relevant anymore. Like if you don't want to do them for completionism's sake or for collection's sake, don't do them. They won't provide you with anything valuable, Same for pretty much everything in Zaralik Cavern, I think. I think Zaralik Cavern has more or less completely been made redundant by Emerald Dream and the upgrades to Time Rifts and Dream Surges.
Yeah, they completely relegated that chunk of content. It was very weird to have this entire essentially continent that you can go into, this entire zone you can go into, that is now literally, hey, do you want transmog stuff, or some profession things are sort of locked away in there, and that's it.
Right. Yeah, I think I don't think any of the gear got bumped up, but I could be wrong. I just can't remember. I got one aiding the Niffin bag. I did that last week because I was going around with a contract, So I was like, whatever, let me do that too. I don't think the gear was particularly relevant. It is a source of gear, of a piece of gear. But really, like if you play through the new campaign, you'll get baseline 421 everywhere.
Yep.
And if you do the Time Rifts and Dream Surges, you get 428s, I want to say. They go up to 450. So, and then if you do your weekly Emerald Dream stuff, you get 441s. But, that's if your goal is quickly getting prepared for like normal raid style, gearing or, low to mid-teen keystones. So it's kind of tricky because a lot of stuff has come in Dragonflight that sort of lived and died in the span of a 2-month-long patch.
Yep.
It's just like this activity that was just there for that span of time, and it still happens and it's still on this timer. You can go to the Primalist Future if you want to, but if you're not there to collect Mog mounts, whatever, then you're not really benefiting from that. So it's funny. In previous expansions, this was sort of locked in, It was just like, well, you pretty much live in this new patch content, or like there's these things that you do all expansion, and then they incorporate the new patch content. And Dragonflight hasn't really worked like that. So that would be, that'd be my advice in terms of stuff to focus on. I wouldn't go any farther back than that. Do Emerald Dream. Do if 450 top end item level is interesting to you, then do a Time Rift and do a Dream Surge. And that's really, I mean, I wouldn't worry about doing anything else. If something else seems appealing because you like the vibe of the place, or you want to collect a thing off a vendor, there's all kinds of stuff in the world in Dragonflight, but in terms of what is super relevant for you to do, I think it pretty much stops there. Like if you didn't do Obsidian Citadel, you could go grind that out and get your Black Dragonflight scales for your mounts, and get all those cosmetics, and you can go do what is the place in the place with all the arcane stuff and the Sundered Flame, and you had the bar that you fill up, the Arcane Conservatory or whatever it was. Like there's a rep there, there's cosmetics, there's no relevant power, and you can go grind that all day if you want to. So I don't know, that stuff is off my radar. Like I never finished that grind. I did finish Obsidian Citadel pretty fast, but they've kind of put all of these like super optional grinds for cosmetics and stuff all throughout this expansion from day one. which must really be kind of a nightmare to try to unravel if you haven't kept up with it, or you've been away, or you're fresh in.
It was.
So yeah, it's just like there's so much stuff that really, if you could take or leave the cosmetic angle, if you could take or leave the collection angle, like all of that stuff from 10.0 up through, honestly, through 10.1, it's totally optional. I think the only stuff you're really looking at is the 10.2.5 and 10.2.7 stuff, which I mentioned, 10.1.5 and 10.1.7 stuff, and the current stuff. So I guess that's kind of the nice thing is Emerald Dream is sort of a clean break, because you could just do Emerald Dream and be okay, right? Like, it's nice to have the older patch stuff be upgradable to relevance. But if you just don't even want to do that and you just want to live in the Emerald Dream, it's like, I don't know.
Absolutely can.
What do you think the lap is around Emerald Dream for the week? Like an hour? You know, if you're just going to check in and do one big World Quest pass and do the weekly events, it's maybe 2 hours, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you can kill the rares and things like that, which will get you some other rewards and some more chances at gear and some mounts and some pets and stuff like that. I mean, the loop is about an hour when it comes to what you need to do. Like, in general, like if you wanted to do all the events and everything else, you're probably looking at like an hour and a half to sort of do all of that. I mean, if I'm not including LFR in there, which is going to take 45 minutes to an hour on its own anyways. But yeah, I think if even what we listed as the 10.1.7 content on, you're probably looking at like an hour and a half of time to commit to be able to knock those things out. And it's not crazy to accomplish that. So, you know, I think it's a pretty good place for most players to start, is that kind of spot. So thanks for writing in, Justin. Appreciate it. Certainly hope that we can help you out with that. And if you got, more questions, feel free to hop into our Discord, startingzone.com/Discord. You can ask more questions there. I'd like to take a moment to thank all of our patrons and give a shout out for a specific group of them. Alianas, Arajian, Celine, James, Kapawi, Max, Shorel, and Vespin. Thank you so much for everything that you in particular give. But a big shout out to all of our patrons and everything that all of you give. It all goes towards contributing to improving the show, paying the bills for hosting things, equipment, all that kind of idea. So it keeps us up and running every week. You patrons are the lifeblood of the show. So thank you so much for being there to support us. Our Patreon is over at patreon.com/thestartingzone. As folks can jump in and support the show there. And a big shout out to our newest patron, James F. Thank you so much for hopping in and supporting the show. We really appreciate all of our patrons and everything that everyone's willing to give.
Absolutely. Thank you, James. Welcome aboard. And thank you all patrons, past and present, for supporting the show. It means a lot and helps us, keep the show in production and keep all the episodes hosted and all that stuff. So thank you all for contributing and helping us make the best show that we can.
Thank you. All right, if you folks have enjoyed this episode of The Starting Zone, consider heading over to your iTunes, your Apple Podcasts, and leave us those 5-star reviews. They really help out our show, and we love reading the ones that we get from our listeners, and we don't have any on the docket right now, which means if you leave us a 5-star review, it will be on the next episode, which is exciting. Happy to read it out here when you leave it. So no matter where you are and where you listen, if you take that little bit of time to go over to your iTunes, your Apple Podcasts, and leave us a 5-star, it will help us climb the charts, more people find the shows, and hey, we get to read your message here. So thanks so much for everyone who leaves us some reviews. That wraps up episode 606 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for this episode or leave us a comment on the show, you can head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. And if you want to contact the show and leave us your feedback or ask a question, you can email us at thestartingzone@gmail.com or reach out to us on Twitter at The Starting Zone or over and join our Discord at thestartingzone.com/Discord. If you want to get your hands on some TSZ gear, you can find that over at TeePublic. That's teepublic.com/stores/The Starting Zone. You can check out all the designs on shirts and mugs and stickers and all that kind of fun stuff. And Jason, if folks are trying to find you on the internet, where can they do that?
Best place to find me, as always, is over on Twitter. You can find me over there at Shieldwald. And you can also find me streaming WoW over on twitch.tv/Shieldwald. Streams are usually Tuesday, Wednesday, Sunday. It's 7:30 Eastern. Doing Amir Drasil stuff, doing Season 3 Keystones, just hanging out and doing other, Emerald Dream stuff. I've had this ongoing battle with my ISP, and it's certainly not resolved, so stream can be kind of unpredictable, but I do try to throw it up whenever I'm, sitting down to play. So come check out the Twitch over there. I also have a channel at youtube.com/Shieldwald, but considering I can't stream to one outlet, I haven't really been trying to multi-stream lately.
Oh, well, if you're trying to find me, you can find me on Twitter by throwing a subscribe or a follow to @Spencer_Downey. Twitch is twitch.tv/SpencerHD, and YouTube is youtube.com/@SpencerHD. And with that, for Jason and myself, we want to say thanks for listening, and jobs done.